You are officially no longer part of this family. Ethan, my dad messaged, you never belonged. I chose to stay silent. Instead, I removed my name from the joint property ownership, cut off my access to the generational fund, and officially requested to sever all ties with shared investments. By 7:43 in the morning, my sister had already called 7 times. Then at 9:12, my mother left a voicemail, her voice breaking, asking why lawyers had to be involved. I calmly drank my coffee and responded, what I never expected, what really caught me off guard, was that my own parents would be the ones to turn against me. Not because I made a mistake, but because Ethan, their favored son, told the perfect lie at exactly the right moment. That was enough. No discussion followed. Just a message from my dad at 7:13 saying, you are officially not part of this family. You never were. I did not reply, not because I had nothing to say, but because I realized I was finally done pretending. No longer would I pretend I owed them anything after all I had already sacrificed. They decided to cut me out, so I walked away. At 7:24, I logged into the property title account and removed myself from the lake house ownership that they could not have maintained without me. I transferred full ownership to them, so the property taxes next quarter would become their sole responsibility. I also cut off their access to the generational fund I had built and contributed to for nearly 10 years. $500 each month they had come to rely on vanished. At 7:36, I sent the legal documents to my attorney to finalize the termination of all joint investments. Ethan and I made joint investments and officially separated from the LLC. By 7:43, my sister had called me 7 times, but I chose to ignore every call. Then, at 9:12, my mom left a voicemail with her voice breaking partway through. Why are lawyers involved? I replied with a single message. Ask your youngest. This situation was not driven by revenge, at least not at that moment. It was about distancing myself from a collapsing house of cards before it all came down and dragged me along. The difficult part is when people get used to you carrying their burdens, they become lost when you stop doing it. My dad always managed the family as if it were a business. Yet when the business faltered, suddenly it turned into an urgent family crisis, and guess who was always the financial backup? It was me. I was the one who rescued them when a shipping company lost half its inventory. I paid legal fees when they faced zoning violations. While they enjoyed vacations under the guise of strategy retreats, I worked nights building a trust meant to last generations. Gratitude was nowhere in sight. They expected my help, as if I owed them merely for being part of the family. Ethan did not contribute anything, neither money nor effort. Instead, he offered charm, excuses, and a never-ending stream of issues he expected others to resolve. But he had one exceptional skill. He knew exactly how to tell our parents what they wanted to hear. He could portray my caution as betrayal, my quietness as arrogance, and my patience as a threat. He convinced them I was secretly planning to shut down the company. They accused me of secretly transferring funds, of cutting them out of something I had created for them. Yet they never even questioned if it was true. They simply sent the message. The irony was strong. I had never intended to leave. But now, I was gone. I would no longer be good to them. I would stop being the problem solver, the connector, the silent daughter who showed up, tidied things, and never expected acknowledgement. They had chosen Ethan. Let them keep him. Let's observe how far charm carries them when the expenses come and the finances run dry. They believed they were disciplining me. They had no clue what awaited them. The unraveling happened more slowly than I had anticipated. One might imagine that cutting off someone's financial support would cause immediate chaos, but it was more like a gradual decline. Initially, there was silence, followed by confusion, and then growing desperation. It was the third day after my father's message when he attempted to withdraw money from the long-standing family fund. A usual withdrawal, $2,500 for the office lease. It failed. I expected it to. I had already blocked their access and removed my permission for any automatic transfers. The account remained open but was locked from their end. At 10:16 in the morning, I saw the decline notice through my monitoring app. At 10:25, I received a missed call from my father and then a voicemail. I listened once. He did not yell or accuse. He sounded like someone struggling to accept that the rules had shifted without his consent. By noon, my mother sent a message. "Can we please talk? You're scaring us." That comment made me chuckle. Not because it was amusing, but because it confirmed what I had long suspected. They never regarded me as an individual, just as a support, a part of the structure they could rely on without ever questioning how much load I could bear. The instant I stepped back, they were lost and unsure how to operate. That frightened them more than anything else. I did not offer a reaction. Instead, I accessed the server I had used to oversee the fund allocations and downloaded 3 years' worth of transaction records. Not for their benefit, but for myself, to remind me of every month I had quietly filled the gaps in payroll, building upkeep, and private school fees for Ethan's children when he was between jobs. That night, I calculated everything, which came to just under $430,000 of my personal funds spent to keep their lives stable. They had become dependent on the belief that money would always be available, specifically mine. I held no anger anymore. I was precise and determined. I hired my accountant the very same day to start a comprehensive audit of every shared investment, every asset, and every ownership title where my name was listed alongside theirs. My objective was not retaliation, at least not yet. It was about separation, financial detachment, a clean break. However, the situation did not remain silent for long. By the end of the week, the calls increased twofold. My sister bombarded me with messages, alternating between begging and subtle guilt trips. She said, "You are causing pain, Mom. Ethan made an error, but you are making things worse. You are punishing all of us." I was not punishing anyone. I simply reached a point where I stopped giving without hesitation. 2 days later, my mom sent me a lengthy email. I still remember the subject line. It said, "Please do not do this." The message combined nostalgia with emotional pressure. She recounted memories of holding me as a baby, expressed how proud they had always been, and admitted she could not understand why I was making this choice now. Then the tone shifted. She mentioned Ethan felt awful, that he had gotten carried away, and claimed his only intention was to protect the family. Protect them from what exactly? The one person truly safeguarding them. I did not respond. However, that email served a crucial purpose. It revealed their true strategy. They were not attempting to resolve anything. Instead, they aimed to control the narrative, get ahead of the situation, shift the blame onto me, and recast Ethan as the poor, misunderstood younger brother who simply made a mistake. That was when things took a darker turn. I received a call from an old family friend, someone I had not spoken to in years. He sounded uneasy, clearly reading from a prepared statement someone had coached him to deliver. He inquired if I was all right, mentioned he had heard troubling rumors, and asked if I was being influenced by someone or facing issues I had not shared. My parents were orchestrating a smear campaign. Without a word, I ended the call. The following morning, I accessed the family business account, one of the last remaining shared assets I had not yet handled. I downloaded all the documents, including ownership agreements and client lists. I reviewed the operating agreements and then contacted my lawyer. I explained that I was ready to start the process of completely leaving, not just a partial exit or reduced involvement, but a full separation. She asked what my expectations were from the company. I told her, "Nothing, except I want every penny I ever invested returned to me, and I need everything documented, signed, and legally foolproof." She paused. Most people do not walk away from something that significant without conditions. But I was finished trying to repair something that was never mine in the first place. They never viewed me as an equal partner, just as a resource. And now this resource was pulling the plug. I did not care what happened to the company after I left. I did not mind if Ethan ran it into the ground within half a year. Actually, that is not entirely true. I did care. I wanted to watch it happen with my own eyes. The official separation was finalized on a Tuesday morning. I received the confirmation email at 8:42 a.m. Every document was signed, filed, and sealed. Legally, financially, and structurally, I was no longer connected to the family business. All ties were severed, and every access point was removed. My name vanished from their records, accounts, and all future plans. That morning, I sat on my balcony with a cup of black coffee, observing the city below as it went about its day, seemingly unaware of the storm I had just unleashed. The atmosphere felt eerily calm, like the quiet before a fuse burns out and the explosion follows. It did not last long. By midday, my mother appeared. I stayed silent in my apartment when she kept calling. She rang continuously for almost 10 minutes. Then she sent a message saying, "Please do not throw it all away." Throw what away? They already had. The moment they chose Ethan's version over mine, the moment they allowed him to turn them against me without verifying any of his claims, this was no longer about business. It was no longer about money. It had become a matter of respect. For the first time in my life, I understood I did not owe them anything. After that, they tried everything. First came the guilt. My father left a message saying he now understood, and that maybe they had overreacted. My mother sent voice notes acting as if nothing had happened, discussing a new marketing idea like I was still involved, like the past 2 weeks had never existed. Then came the promises. We will make changes. You can restructure the company any way you want. We will step back and let you take the lead. It was almost laughable. They honestly believed they could lure me back with the little control I had already earned and built. I had been running that business behind the scenes for years, managing the finances, reorganizing their operations, even rebranding their failing product line when they were just 2 months from collapse. They put Ethan's name on the success and sent thank you messages to me. Now they wanted me back because everything was starting to fall apart without me. But I was not going back. I ignored all their contact. Instead, I intensified my efforts. I met with my accountant again and began diverting my recovered investments into a distinct project I had planned years ago had crossed my mind. Back when I first understood, I would never truly fit into that business unless I owned it completely. At that time, I did not act on it because something about it felt off. However, now the timing seemed right. I formed a new limited liability company, completed all necessary documentation, and began reaching out to former clients not to steal them away, but simply to inform them about my new direction. If they were interested, that was wonderful. But if not, I held no resentment. The reality was that most of these clients had always preferred dealing with me. I was the person who answered their calls, resolved their issues, fixed the chaos that Ethan caused, and was overlooked by my parents. Within a week, the first contract arrived, followed by another, and then 2 more. Meanwhile, problems at their side were mounting. Ethan had been putting on a facade his entire life. Now that it was time to deliver results, he failed. He lacked understanding of supply chains, financial planning, client relations, and taxation. My father began sending me emails as if I was still part of the company payroll. I chose not to respond. Then 3 weeks after my departure, I received a call from Ethan. He did not begin with an apology, nor did he ask how I was doing. Instead, he inquired whether I was hiring. I stared at my phone for a long moment after his call. He had not left a voicemail, but let the phone ring twice before hanging up. I declined to return his call. 3 days later, he sent a brief and straightforward text, as if trying to keep things casual would erase all of his past actions. The message read, "Hey, I heard you are doing something new. Any chance you need help?" The situation was so ridiculous that I burst out laughing. The very person who had damaged my reputation within my own family by telling our parents I was attempting to steal the business was now asking for a position. At first, I suspected it was a prank, or one of his miserable tactics to extract information from my parents. However, the signs soon became clear. His LinkedIn profile quietly switched to indicate he was available for employment. His usual posts about entrepreneurship and building a legacy abruptly stopped. The facade he had maintained was beginning to fall away. I chose not to reply. Instead, I reached out to someone else. Her name was Clara, a project manager we had worked alongside for several years, who had left discreetly after disagreements with Ethan over budget matters. I recalled her excellence: meticulous, drama-free, and effective. She responded within an hour, and we arranged a meeting. In less than 7 days, I had managed to regain the support of 5 previous vendors, secured contracts with 2 significant clients, and assembled a small but capable team. People wanted to collaborate with me not because of any flashy surface, but because I delivered on promises. News was spreading that I was creating something genuine and, crucially, dependable. Then, an unexpected twist arrived. My mother invited me to dinner, not through email, but via a handwritten card sent to my office. It contained the reservation details for the restaurant. She wrote, "We just want to talk. No pressure. Please come." It seemed she was trying to restore normalcy, as if nothing had gone wrong. A warm supper, a few heartfelt words, and perhaps some nostalgic moments reflecting on better times. Then came the turning point. So how could we fix this? I did not go myself, but I sent someone else. Ethan. That morning I finally answered his message. "Come by tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Let's have a talk." He arrived early, overdressed, wearing a watch I knew he no longer had the means to afford. He did not ask about the company. He did not apologize. Instead, he treated it like a casual networking event. I listened carefully as he pitched himself as if we had not grown up under the same roof. Then I slid a contract to him. Entry level, no shares, no official position, a base salary that was modest. I watched him examine it twice, his eyes flinching when he reached the probation period clause. He asked if this was some kind of joke. I told him it was not. He left without signing, too proud to accept it. Yet I knew he would return. The very next morning, he came back. No questions, just a signature and a handshake that felt more like surrender. News spread quickly. My parents did not comment at first. But a week later, I received a long message from my dad, apologetic, yet unclear. Buried halfway through the text was the line that revealed everything. "We just cannot understand why you are doing this to us." As if this was some form of punishment, not the inevitable outcome of something that had been decaying well before I ever got involved. The truth was, I was not doing it against them. I was doing it without them. 3 weeks after Ethan signed the contract, the flaws in my parents' business became undeniable. Their biggest supplier severed ties. My services were halted because of unpaid bills. 2 long-term clients decided to leave. One of them joined my team without me even reaching out. I received a polite email from their representative explaining they valued clear communication and punctual delivery, which I understood as a polite way of saying they had enough of waiting on Ethan. But the true turning point happened when my parents discovered that Ethan worked for me. He had not told them himself, likely out of embarrassment, or because a part of him still held on to some illusion of being their pride. They learned the truth through a client who assumed they were still in touch. My mother was the first to call me. I let the call go to voicemail and listened as she spoke in circles. She did not sound angry but rather confused, unable to grasp how everything had reversed so quickly. She mentioned betrayal and loyalty, saying this was a slap in the face after all we had done. I did not respond because there was simply nothing left to say. What caught me off guard was how fast their view of Ethan took a turn. The favored one, the youngest, the person they protected from every consequence, suddenly became the target of blame. My sister called late one night after having a bit too much wine and vented everything to me. She told me Mom said Ethan had humiliated them. Dad called him a traitor. They claimed he had manipulated everyone, including me. That phrase made me hesitate, including me. They still failed to recognize that I was never the one being manipulated. Ethan had been their reflection. He followed the instructions given to him without question, guarding the illusion regardless of the sacrifices. Yet when that illusion broke apart, they resented him not for what he did, but because I did not break anything. I chose to step away and create something greater. Now, from the outside looking in, they finally understood what I had been supporting all along. In the meantime, Ethan underwent a gradual transformation. He began arriving on time, started posing genuine questions, and grew quiet during meetings, taking notes calmly without expecting anything automatically. I was unsure if it was remorse, desperation, or simply the dawning awareness that I would not provide him with easy paths. Yet none of that mattered because he was beginning to grasp the true meaning of working hard for achievements. My parents did not change. Their focus was fixed on witnessing their empire diminish. Without my efforts, the foundation I established, the unseen framework behind their accomplishments, had crumbled. There was no longer a financial cushion nor subtle remedies, only them, their choices, and the outcomes they refused to imagine. The irony was that, for the first time ever, they started to show me something resembling respect. They never said it openly, but the change was clear in my father's altered tone in his emails, in my mother's shift from demanding to requesting, and in the genuine cessation of their arrogance. That respect was what I had truly desired, even more than the money or the business. Almost, I nearly overlooked it. The envelope lay hidden between two pieces of junk mail on my office desk. It was simple and unmarked, without a return address. The handwriting on the front caught my attention immediately. It was neither neat nor refined. Rather, it was cramped and hurried, as if the writer had been indecisive about sending it at all. Inside, there were 2 pages folded twice. The paper was thin and seemed torn from a cheap notepad. The opening line resembled a report. Revenues had dropped by 42%. We lost 3 contracts in this quarter. The letter was from my father. There was no greeting or sorrow, only plain figures and facts, as if he addressed a board rather than me. For a moment, I thought maybe the letter was meant for someone else, but then the tone shifted. He wrote about losing clients, about the accountant they had to let go because they could no longer afford her wages. He described how he had not slept more than 4 hours a night since February, how he longed for the sense of stability he had never truly valued when it was there. Then came a sentence that struck me deeply. "You were never the outsider. We just made you feel that way." It was the closest thing to honesty I had ever received from him. It was not a sincere apology or an offer of forgiveness, but a man admitting he had spent years defending the wrong child, prioritizing the wrong things, and believing an incorrect version of reality. The letter concluded with a soft plea. "Come back, not to fix everything, but simply to talk." I did not reply. I felt no need to. Some fractures cannot be mended. Yet I kept the letter. I held on to the letter not because I truly believed every word he wrote, but because I understood that now he genuinely believed it himself. And now it was far too late to turn back. Within that same week, Ethan silently transformed into someone reliable and steady. He was not outstanding, yet he consistently showed up. He listened carefully. He kept his focus low and began to resolve problems he once passed off to others. I was unsure whether it was remorse, a matter of survival, or simply the result of finally maturing. Nonetheless, whatever the reason, I chose not to question it. I allowed him to prove himself. One evening, I stayed late at the office to finish a new contract. I found Ethan still at his desk, handling a vendor problem that used to overwhelm him and lead to blaming others or making excuses. I asked what he was working on. Without even looking up, he quietly said, "I'm trying not to mess this up." It was not a direct apology, but close enough to one. The new company was flourishing. It was smaller and more efficient, yet sharper in approach. Clients trusted me because I never deceived them. I did not make unrealistic promises. I simply fulfilled what I said I would. And the best part was no one could take that away from me. However, I was not finished yet. While my parents struggled to keep their business going, I quietly negotiated something they had not even noticed. It was a subtle acquisition, but not of their company directly. It was too obvious and dramatic for that. Instead, I went after something else. A small logistics firm they relied upon heavily, the one responsible for managing 70% of their regional distribution. They had not paid their contract in full for 2 months. I knew this because the owner contacted me, asking if I was aware whether they were still financially stable. I did not respond to that question directly. Instead, I inquired about what it would take to buy him out completely. He provided a figure. By the end of that day, I had sent a deposit through a wire transfer. The agreement was set to close within 3 weeks. When it did, my parents' business would not crash immediately. It would simply slow down. Orders would be delayed. The foundation would become less efficient. Deadlines would shift just enough to cause trouble. Just enough so they would understand that respect, once lost, is costly to regain. Meanwhile, Ethan changed gradually. He stopped arriving late, began asking genuine questions. He stayed quiet during meetings, took notes, and no longer acted entitled. I was uncertain whether it was guilt, desperation, or the slow comprehension that I was not going to offer him shortcuts. But it did not matter. He was grasping what it meant to earn something. My parents, on the other hand, were distracted. They were too occupied watching their empire diminish. Without me, the framework I had created, the unseen support behind their success, had fallen apart. There was no longer a financial cushion, no quiet troubleshooting, just them, their choices, and the consequences they had never imagined would arrive. The irony was that for the first time in my life, they began treating me with something close to respect. They never expressed it directly, but the change was clear. My father's tone softened in emails. My mother shifted from demanding to asking, and they finally stopped pretending that they understood better. That respect, more than any money, was what truly mattered. More than the business, more than anything else, it was what I had desired all along. I nearly overlooked it. The envelope was hidden between 2 pieces of junk mail on my office desk, plain and without any markings. There was no return address. The handwriting on the front caught my attention. It wasn't neat or refined. It looked cramped and hurried, as if the writer had gone back and forth about whether to send it at all. Inside were 2 pages folded twice. The paper was thin, probably torn from an inexpensive notepad. The first line resembled a report, stating that revenues were down by 42%. We had lost 3 contracts this quarter. It was from my father. No greeting, no excuse, only figures and facts as though he were addressing a board of directors. For a moment, I wondered if it was meant for someone else. But then the tone shifted. He wrote about the clients leaving, about the accountant they had to dismiss because they could no longer afford her wages, about how he had not slept more than 4 hours a night since February. He confessed missing the sense of stability, even if he hadn't valued it before. Then came the line that struck me deeply. "And you were never the outsider. We just made you feel like one." That was the closest I would ever come to hearing the truth from him. It was not a genuine apology nor an offer of forgiveness, simply a man recognizing he had spent years defending the wrong child, prioritizing the wrong things, and believing the wrong story. The letter closed with a gentle request. He asked me to return, not to fix anything, but just to talk. I did not reply. I did not have to. Some things once shattered are not meant to be restored. However, I kept the letter, not because I trusted every word Ethan wrote, but because I realized he genuinely believed it now, and now it was too late to change anything. That very week, Ethan quietly became someone new, steady and reliable. He was not outstanding, yet he consistently showed up. He listened attentively and focused on resolving problems he used to avoid. I could not tell if it was guilt, a survival instinct, or perhaps simply growing up. Yet whatever motivated him, I did not doubt it. I allowed him the chance to prove himself. One evening, I was working late to finalize a contract when I noticed him at his desk still handling a vendor issue that once overwhelmed him with blame and excuses. I asked what he was doing. Without looking up, he replied, "I'm trying not to mess this up." It was not an apology, but it was close enough. My new company was flourishing. Small, efficient, but sharp. Clients trusted me because I was honest, never making empty promises. I simply delivered. The best part was nobody could take that away from me. Yet I was far from finished. While my parents struggled to keep their business running, I was quietly negotiating something they had not even realized. It was a subtle acquisition, not their company itself, too obvious and dramatic. Instead, I targeted a small logistics firm they relied on, the one managing 70% of their regional distribution. They had not paid their invoices in full for 2 months, and I was fully aware of this. The owner reached out to me, wondering if I knew whether the company was still financially stable. I did not respond directly to that. Instead, I inquired about what it would cost to buy him out entirely. He gave me a figure. By the end of that day, I had transferred a deposit. The agreement was set to be completed within 3 weeks. When that happened, my parents' business did not collapse immediately. It just started to slow down. Orders took longer to fulfill, operations became less efficient, and deadlines shifted enough to cause noticeable damage. Just enough for them to understand that losing respect is something costly to regain. Here is the latest update. It has been 11 months since the message that ended it all. The business my parents once ran with pride still exists, but appears very different now. It is smaller, quieter, and lacks the confidence it once projected. They lost their most important contracts, and the majority of their staff left within half a year. Currently, they rent out half of their office space simply to afford the utilities. The logistics company I took over continues operating smoothly under a new name. I retained the team, tidied up the financial records, and integrated their network. This turned out to be one of the smartest decisions I have ever made. Ethan is still working with me, arrives early, and keeps a low profile. We avoid discussing past events. We focus on work. That is the deal. I do not fully trust him, but I have learned to distinguish between trust and usefulness. He understands which side of the table he wants to be on now. That is sufficient. Since the letter, my parents have not attempted to reach out again. I believe they finally realized that this version of me is not someone they can control, guilt, or manipulate. I don't hate them. In fact, I don't even feel anger anymore. However, I refuse to return. That opportunity closed the moment they chose sides and then attempted to rewrite the past. I once believed family was unbreakable, that no matter what occurred, blood ties would always bring you back. But I was mistaken. Family is not about shared DNA. It is about respect, value, and mutual effort. Without those elements, it is just an agreement you never agreed to. Many say revenge tastes sweet, perhaps for some, but for me, The true satisfaction came from walking away and creating something of my own. Watching my life flourish, not because of what I took, but because of what I stopped giving. Sometimes you need everything to fall apart to discover who was truly holding things together. And sometimes you have to let people fail to realize if they ever stood beside you. I am doing well now. That is the latest update. I am doing well. Occasionally, I find myself reflecting on how different everything could have been if they had simply asked me instead of making assumptions. If Ethan had been honest. If they had seen me as more than a fallback, more than a safety net. But these thoughts no longer stay with me the way they used to. They drift by like cars passing outside my window. I have stopped craving the version of family I once chased. The people I have now, the ones who show up, contribute, and stay truthful, are more than enough. That is what letting go truly means. You do not just, when you let go of what has caused you pain, you create space for something new to enter your life. By releasing the hurt, you open yourself up to opportunities and experiences that were previously blocked or overshadowed. This process allows healing to begin and growth to take place, bringing positive changes that can transform your perspective and reality. Instead of clinging to old wounds, embracing this change invites hope and fresh possibilities that refresh your mind and spirit.